Okay, good morning, folks. Thank you for listening today, and I'm really excited to have Seth Gross on the phone. Seth is an owner at Bull City Burger and Brewery, as well as Pompieri Pizza in Durham, North Carolina. And he has a lot of experience in the business, nearly 30 years in the restaurant business. Went to Culinary Institute of America, and Seth has some really awesome philosophies around his business, and I can't wait to talk to him because he's really got a very clear vision for what he's trying to do, and his story is really unique, and he's kind of drawn a line in the sand as to what they're all about, which I admire so much. So, Seth, thanks so much for taking the time to do this.
Pleasure to be here.
So what I was referring to about sort of drawing the line in the sand, so I'm on the Bull City Burger and Brewery site, and I was kind of learning about you guys. And, I mean, you have just, and I really love this, by the way. I think it's so nice and refreshing to know what somebody stands for and to see that they have core beliefs and they stick by those. And so folks, like, you can check out Seth's site, but I'll give you an example. One of the things they're really big on at Bull City is they only use grass-fed beef. And I'll let Seth talk a little bit about why that is, but there's even a line in it that says, we'll close before we use corn-fed beef. And so that really stood out to me. And then, you have a clear mission statement and what your values are. And you guys, I just underlined, I wrote down stands for something, and I underlined it like 5 times when I was doing the notes for this. So, Seth, talk a little bit about that and why, just what's behind all that and why it's so important to you.
It's been a slow evolution. When I got out of cooking school, I went to work for some top restaurants and chefs, and you got exposed to a lot of interesting ingredients. And at that time, farmers markets and working for CSAs and all this was sort of in its infancy. This is early 1990s, and the exposure to these ingredients made me start to kind of question some things. I don't know how conscious it was, but as I would meet some of these farmers and see ingredients roll in the back door and say, wow, this is what this looks like, and someone would explain to me exactly why these tomatoes look different than what I'm used to seeing, and then I would taste things, and it all started to click, and I started to really question a lot about our food system. And then you start reading, and that's always dangerous because you start learning, and ignorance is always nice up to a point, and then you realize, wait a second, what I'm doing is not good. And I started learning about high fructose corn syrup and the possible detrimental effect to our health from that, and then trans fats. And then people like Michael Pollan's books started coming out, and you start reading that stuff, and it all sort of came together. And then sort of the pivotal moment for me, of course, a lot of folks, you have kids, and then you start thinking about what is it that I'm doing that is going to make their future brighter, better? What am I going to leave behind? And I started thinking that we simply cannot enable the food system we have. And every week I have a food tour that I do, and I open the doors to the church, temple, synagogue, or mosque of pasture-raised beefism, and I preach for about 15 minutes, and I warn people that there's a low point, and when you think that we're there, we're actually not. It gets worse. And then I bring people back up and say there's hope. And that hope is pasture-raised beef. We simply cannot continue on the path that we have, where we feed America using so much corn, either through corn syrup and things like that in our diet, or through feeding livestock and all of the hormones and antibiotics that go with that. It is literally killing us slowly, and I don't want to enable that. I wanted to make a difference, and I think the one thing that people do every day in our world is eat, those who I interact with every day. And if I want to affect change in my community, food is a great vehicle to make that voice. So we're not preachy except for that Saturday sermon. We just sort of say, hey, we feature pasture-raised beef. And if people are willing to ask, well, why, then it gives me an opportunity to really expand on that and give them some information. And most people come away with sort of, wow, I had no idea. I wish someone had told me that. And I know it's hard as a former user. You can't quit overnight, but you start with at home, you start making changes in your diet, and then slowly as you go out, you start to question, where did this food come from? And if enough of the consumers out there are questioning these things and asking chefs to make changes in their menus and what they do, I think that there's a movement there, and that's what I'm all about.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I want you to talk a little bit about the difference in So I think a lot of people don't know that. I mean, you're starting to hear the term grass-fed, and then I think there's the whole idea of whether it's grass-fed and corn-finished or grass-fed and grass-finished. And I started looking at this a few years ago, and I realized, like, oh, my gosh, like, you know, that you think, like, oh, well, I got into this thing where I really was trying to eat, you know, more meats and everything and less carbohydrates. And then I realized, well, yeah, but, you know, this sort of mass-produced corn-fed beef basically just doesn't have any nutrients by the point, you know, you put in your mouth. And a lot of that's because of what it's fed. So grass-fed would be, I mean, filling my gas, but like it has a ton more omega-3s. It's got it's less saturated fat. The fat it has is healthier fat. Like it's basically because that's what cows are supposed to eat, right? I mean, and that,
right. Exactly right. You know, when we started changing cows from feeding on grass to corn, it had an enormous effect on everything in our lives, from our healthcare system, the way cars are built. All of it has been affected by corn, and this changing the diet of the cow has had a huge impact on our health, because when a cow eats corn, you have higher saturated fat, higher cholesterol, lower linoleic acid, lower omega fatty acids, and those two things fight cancer. In America, we have more obesity, cancer, heart disease, strokes, and diabetes than any nation on the planet. And a big part of that is definitely the meat that we've been eating. It's been a slow erosion of our health. We didn't see these effects prior to the 1970s when we decided to start feeding cows corn. And I remind people that our beef is banned in the EU. It is against the law to feed a cow corn in Europe, and you cannot take American beef to Europe. It is forbidden. And in Europe, they simply do not have the amount of health problems that we have, especially because of our meat and the amount of corn that is in people's diets.
Do you think, you know, one thing I always think about with this is, like, you mentioned that, so there's an education piece and that you know, that we were up against, but is there a cultural piece to this too, Seth? And what I mean is, like we tend to want things fast, right? And to get things fast, you have to get cheap, right? So, I mean, you know, like the idea of like, oh, let me stuff down this quick food while I'm at my desk punching away at a keyboard is a lot more common than let me take, oh, and by the way, for, you know, a small amount of money, a few bucks, versus let me spend, you know, $20 to sit and slowly eat a, you know, quality meal of farm to fork type food. Now, it seems like that idea is beginning to catch on the fringes, but it's not mainstream by any means. And I know a lot of the folks a lot of my friends that are educated people don't even like, it just doesn't even cross their radar. But do you feel like there's a cultural aspect to this too?
Absolutely. I think you're right. It's just for 40 years how we have been raised and what we have done, and it's a paradigm shift for folks to think about. You know, at Bull City Burgers Brewery, we're the kind of restaurant that doesn't have tomatoes in January on our burgers. And you know, I've been sent emails praising that and saying how amazing it is. I can't believe you stand for that. This is so great. And I've had an equal number of people tell me they will never come back to the restaurant. They will never eat there again. I hate this restaurant because you don't have tomatoes in January. And I say, well, the tomatoes are mealy, they're hard, and they don't taste good. And I've literally had customers say to me, I don't care, a tomato belongs on a burger. And at the heart of that is how we have become as a society and a culture. We have become enabled to think that food should be available all the time, year-round, no matter what we want. And there isn't a blame necessarily on people for that. We have huge food companies that have completely changed the American diet and have absolutely manipulated what we eat and how we do because it was easy for them. So it's funny how a lot of people kind of accept that corn, it's really kind of a seasonal thing. It's a summer thing. We look to sweet corn when it's delicious eating corn. And we don't necessarily expect it unless it comes out of a can in January. But with tomatoes, you know, in America, you should have something red in your salad 12 months of the year. And otherwise, there is something wrong with your restaurant. But that's just not how nature works. And we definitely need to educate people. And, you know, when you pose the question to people and you say, look, you know, Thanksgiving comes once a year, Christmas comes once a year, it's just how it is. And you kind of joke and you sort of lead them into this understanding that, you know, your food, there's advantages to eating seasonally. You get to look forward to things that are really exciting and delicious when they're in season, and then you don't get bored of things. You know, when strawberries are in season, I gorge on them for about 6 to 8 weeks when they're really delicious and good. And after that, strawberry season is over, and there's something else that's coming around the corner, and you get all excited on that. But strawberries are not something we should be eating year-round. And you look at how does that get to the table in January, and it doesn't taste good anyway, there's a real kind of aha moment for some people where they go, you know, I never thought about that.
Man, I'm drinking the juice, my friend. I love that you do that. I love that you stand for that. I think that's so valuable. Let me ask you a question, then I want to talk a little bit more about that. What do you? This is pure personal curiosity and lack of knowledge and education. So during the winter months, I mean, we don't have a harsh winter here in the Carolinas, but you know, we have winter months. What do you? Like, what vegetables are available? Well, it
gets hard. You know, at Pompieri Pizza, we joke that if you like Brussels sprouts, you're going to love it here in the winter because we do a lot of Brussels sprout pizzas and, you know, these kind of kale pizzas and things that do well in this colder weather. And that's just how it is. If you come in February and you think you're going to see zucchini and tomatoes on a pizza, it just isn't going to happen. We just aren't going to do that. We're trying to work with local farmers. I like that food should be traceable, that you know it's accountable. Where did that come from? And we use different things to make that point. You know, at Bull City, it's the tomatoes. Granted, you know, we still have caramelized onions on the menu, but we simply can't. We simply cannot, you know, just get rid of everything that isn't seasonal, like, you know, having an onion that isn't available or garlic or something because it isn't local. And we just use tomatoes as a way to communicate that message. But for the most part, on a burger, most of the things that we have are grown locally. I mean, lettuce can be grown in the winter in greenhouse, and I'm kind of finicky that way too. Yes, you can get tomatoes that are local in January, except they're grown in a greenhouse using fossil fuels, and they don't taste good. And so I just won't support that. But lettuce is something that can grow without fossil fuels in greenhouses. So it's a fine line. You know, it strikes to that debate of what is local. You know, you want to open up a can of worms, you start talking about what is local. I live in Durham. Our restaurants are in Durham. If I buy lettuce in Durham, we would all pretty much agree that's local. If I go a few miles toward Raleigh and we buy lettuce there, is that local? A lot of people would say, yeah, that's still pretty local. And then some people would say, well, that's not so local. You know, if we go to Wilmington, is that local? Well, now it's not so local. Well, you know, where do you draw that line? If I want coffee beans, there's no North Carolina coffee beans. You know, we got to go to South America for coffee. You know, so just drawing these lines is always a crucial thing. And at the end of the day, I have to go to sleep at night and think about, you know, what am I comfortable with and where can I draw those lines. There are some things I simply won't compromise on. You know, like I will close the restaurant before I'll serve corn-fed beef. There's no gray area for me there. I know the farmers that we get our beef from. I've walked these farms. I've seen them. I've seen the cows. I've dined with these farmers at their table or in our restaurant, and the relationship is solid, and we're all committed to the same movement, and it's really important.
Man, that's really cool. And I like the tomato as the example because you're prompting questions. You're prompting an opportunity for education. You're prompting people to say, I think this is great, which is who you're really, you know, wanting to serve and who you built your restaurant for. You're prompting people to say, this is BS, I'm not going to eat here, whatever, a tomato belongs on a burger. Then that person's either not the right customer or maybe over time they'll start to go, hey, wait a minute. Now I'm starting to learn, hey, what that guy's doing is actually really cool. So, but see, this is, folks, if you're listening, like I always feel like, and we try to do this at Schedule Fly too, just if you stand for something, you're going to, and correct me where you might disagree, Seth, but I mean my general philosophy on that is like you're going to attract rabid fans of what you believe in. You will also cause people that don't believe that maybe to turn away, but the people become so much more loyal and so much more vocal as fans when they know this is what this guy and his restaurants are about and his team and what they're about. And it's not like they're just going there and eating their food and leaving. When they're behind what you're doing, they're going to go, where like they say, like, somebody has a bad experience, will tell 10 people or whatever, and somebody has a good experience, will tell one. I think if you stand for something, you really believe in something like you do, I think somebody that believes that will go tell 100 people, what you're doing because they believe so much and are so behind. So it's this weird thing where it actually, not only does it make you sleep at night, but it's really good for your business long term. Don't you agree?
Absolutely, I agree. You can't be everything to everybody. There are restaurants that try to do that, and if you try to do that, good luck. I mean, that's a tough road to go, but you end up having to cut corners and compromise because simply trying to please everybody is just a losing proposition to me. And those are those menus where typically a diner or something like that I go to, and you sort of, it's a 17-page plastic thing that you flip through, and they serve breakfast all day, lunch all day, dinner all day, and you got to wonder just how fresh is it if they're serving omelets and meatloaf and spaghetti and pancakes and all of these things. When you come to our restaurants, I like to joke with people, if you came for burgers, you're going to be really happy because we do burgers, we do veggie burgers, hot dogs, and beer, and that's what we do. And if you came for chicken wings and Chinese food and spaghetti, you're going to be really disappointed. But if you like burgers, we make 28 different toppings. We make everything in-house. I mean, the hot sauce, we make the Worcestershire sauce, sriracha, the mayonnaise, the mustard, the barbecue, everything but the ketchup is literally made in the restaurant. And with that, you've got a lot of options. We have a number on the website there. It's kind of just a weird number that sits out on some of the pages. It's just, 67,108,864. And that's the number of hamburgers you can make with 28 different toppings. So if you like burgers, you're in the right place. At the pizza place at Pompieri, we do wood-fired Neapolitan-style pizzas. We do that. We have a few appetizers. We make gelato. But it really wasn't about, hey, let's add pasta to it, and let's do panini sandwiches and ravioli and all these things. I want to make really good burgers. I want to make really good pizza. And that's what we stand for. And I'd rather do quality over quantity. That has always been the mission. If you're not in the mood for pizza, that's okay. Hopefully you are next week or the week after, and you'll come in. Because I just don't want to have a steak and fish entree and all these different things, because as soon as you dilute the menu, I feel like quality begins to drop.
Well, okay. So you clearly have a very strong passion for what you're doing and a very clear philosophy and mission. In fact, on your mission statement and your core values, the first thing is to build one of the best, and this is on the Bull City site, to build one of the best burger places anywhere. And then number two is about your employees. And so I want to ask you about that, because clearly you have to have, when you have your way of doing business and your philosophy, you've got to also have not only just preaching the gospel, so to speak, but I've got to think you have to have staff that are bought into this heavily too. So talk about your employees and clearly also with doing all that you do in house, you have a large staff. I imagine you've got a lot of things going on. So you have to have people that are really behind this, I assume, right? So tell me about your staff.
Absolutely. First of all, the staff is one of the absolute best things about these restaurants. They are fantastic folks who work really hard. They do believe in the mission. Those who come on board are frequently, you guys do something, your food is fresh, I'm not real sure. And after a short period of going through some training and introduction and sitting with me and learning, it's a pretty remarkable transformation. We had an employee, she talks about how she had gone to a family picnic after working with us for a year. And at the family picnic, it was like during the summer, and they were making burgers. She took one bite of the burger and couldn't eat it. Now, this is a girl who probably shops at I know she shopped at like Food Lion and had never, ever in her life considered where does my food come from and what's the quality and all of those things. And from just being an employee and eating our food on a regular basis, it was kind of making a transformation to herself and her children. And I think that's a really powerful thing. The employees are just fantastic in what they bring to the table, how they become so passionate about the mission and sharing it, and how they're willing to educate customers from what they're learning.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure they do. They educate customers, they educate friends. I mean, they become spokespeople for this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Tell me this. I just kind of random, but I noticed on the Bull City site. I thought this was so cool. You have something called the Tattoo Promise, and it's like, hey, if you get a tattoo of our logo, you get like 26% off your meal for life, or whatever. Like, number one, like, dude, that's awesome. So, just what a cool thing. And then I noticed that I just kind of laughed reading it, and then I scrolled down. There's like pictures of people that are doing it. So tell me about that. It's awesome.
We have 6 people who have gotten tattoos with our logo or the name Bull City Burger and Brewery, and it was just sort of something that I had seen done a long time ago, and I kind of filed it away as something I'd love to do someday, just to see if there's that much brand loyalty. And so we decided that we would offer this Tattoo Promise, and if anybody actually did it, they would get a discount for life. Which actually, I'm shocked that there are 6 people, and I'm thrilled at the same time that you really can't. We can never close the restaurant now because, these people have tattoos, so I plan to be here a long time, and they're pretty loyal customers. But it was all done in good fun. It certainly gets a lot of talk. I mean, when folks come in and see this, we've got it posted around the restaurant. You hear the jokes and all that, and, but these folks, they're really proud. They come in and they love to, lift their shirt and show their stomach or wherever they've gotten it and, show off that they have a Bull City tattoo, and then they get their discount. It's just been a real fun thing to see a transformation of brand loyalty and customers.
That's awesome, man. And again, something else that kind of stands out. I mean, there's, goodness gracious, we have 5,000 customers. There's hundreds of thousands of, independent restaurants, not even counting the chains in the U.S. So it's hard, I think, sometimes if you're not creative or you don't stand for something to really stand out. But I think it's so. I see a lot of websites from a lot of restaurants. Man, yours is really for a guy, and maybe it's just I just appreciate the value of. I don't think it's like the product, itself always that is so important. It is critical, but it's the people behind it, the story behind it. What that business stands for. So I tend to really attach myself to businesses that have an authentic story and that believe in something, even if I pay a lot more for it. I feel like when I wear their clothes or eat their food or use their products, that it's more than just like I've got this, like Patagonia as an example. I like them. I like their story. I like what they do. When I wear their stuff, it's not just, hey, I've got this rain jacket. It's like I've got this rain jacket that means something. When I eat a burger in your place or eat your pizza, I feel like I'm eating something that means something. And that's, to more and more people these days that are a little disaffected with corporate America and, in your industry, maybe with big food, what a great thing, man. I mean, it's really cool what you're doing. So I really appreciate and admire you for the way you run your business.
I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've had this is almost really something I probably should have asked you about earlier on, but I am curious. So you've had 27 years or so in the business, but you had a microbiology degree from University of Florida, and then you went to Culinary Institute of America. So just give me a short summary of just your career path, because I know you started out probably cooking, and then now you own 2 places. Have you owned other restaurants, or how did you get where you are today?
The quick story is that I was cooking my way through high school, and I remember coming home my senior year, and I was supposed to go to college. I said to my parents, you know what? I want to be a chef. A chef took me under his wing, and I said, this is really great. I was, enamored by the life and the joking and the banter of the kitchen and the hard work. And, their response was, no way in hell are you going to spend the rest of your life working in kitchens, slaving away in the heat. You are going to college. So to make them happy, I went to college. I got a microbiology degree. And when I graduated, I had 2 applications, one to med school and one to the CIA. I didn't tell my parents about the CIA, and I figured I'll send it in, and if I get in, then I'll make a decision. I still had time to submit my medical application. Well, 2 weeks literally to the day that I graduated from the University of Florida, I started at the CIA in Hyde Park and never really looked back. And I never thought I'd use my microbiology degree, but then I was cooking for a while, and one day I used to hang out and drink beer at a little brew pub in Chicago called Goose Island Brewery, and I got to know Greg Hall, who was the head brewer and the part owner. His dad owned it. And we used to talk a lot. He's a real foodie, and he would ask me about sauces and pairing beer with food and wine with food. And just one day he said to me, you know what, you have a great background that would be perfect for becoming a brewer. My sister's leaving. Do you want to learn to brew beer? And I was not very smart. I was still young and kind of dumb, but I was smart enough to know that everybody seemed to want this job. So I should take it, and I can always go back to cooking. And I'd never homebrewed or anything. But he took me in and taught me so much of what I know today. I'm very appreciative, and allowed me to go from there to becoming a sommelier. And I've traveled the world with wine, and then opened up a wine shop. And finally, I loved what I did, but I always wanted to get back to that burger and beer idea because I love making things with my hands. And so through wine, I was able to meet investors, and those investors invested in me to open up Bull City Burgers Brewery, and that was 4.5 years ago. And now it's led to 2 restaurants, and I'm planning on 2 more. So that's the medium-long story.
No, that's great, man. That's really cool. So, in fact, I want to ask you, because I know you I read somewhere that you have, two main financial backers, and they're from Durham, and clearly, I mean, like you have a focus on doing something that benefits Durham and the surrounding area, and you probably have investors that also have like philosophy. So, but talk a little bit about, like, as you went out, did you kind of did you pitch this to a lot of investors, or did you already know these guys, or tell me a little bit about that process?
No, I knew them through wine, and I've been kicking around the back of my mind, and they said one day, they just said, they had invested in the wine shop and it was going so well. And they said, if you ever want to do anything else, we would love to back you. And that's always a good situation to be in. So I said to them, actually, there is something else I really would like to do. And I showed them the idea and the business plan, and they said, let's go for it. And, I was lucky in that respect. I didn't have to spend a lot of time going out trying to find money and investors. I know that can be a really tough road. I did that for the wine shop, where I had to, find a group of people who were willing to invest in that. But, once you prove yourself once, it gets a lot easier the second time around. And that's always a trick. How do you find someone who believes in your dream as much as you?
Well, so then clearly you have investors that not only, believe in your ability to pull off a successful restaurant, but probably share your philosophy. Is that, do you think that's an important part of that? Like, if you're, because I'm thinking of somebody listening to this that's, maybe raising money, and maybe they even know somebody that has, some capital available, but do you think it's, is it important that you really share the same belief system and philosophies, and they believe in the sort of they're looking long-term, not sort of for a quick, short return, but really they're bought into what you're doing. In other words, there's no myopia there on their part. They're really thinking about the long term and your well-being, and they're bought into kind of how you want to do things and what you're all about.
Well, yes, I agree that there are several types of investors. There are people who invest in something purely for return. And I've done well enough that I think that my investors are happy with the return. But I think because we are all passionate about the food that we make and we cook when we're in the restaurant industry, I would recommend finding people who are passionate about the mission of your restaurant and what your goals are, rather than just purely investment, for a couple of reasons. One, if it doesn't go as well as you'd hoped, hopefully they say, well, it's good, the return is good enough, but we really love what you're doing, and that's okay. But number two, if they are as passionate as you, or get the mission, or they're invested in that, it makes conversations easier, and they're out there as spokespeople and marketing and advertising for you as well. And it just makes a better environment, because they come in and they get as excited as you are to see that fresh foraged morels just came in the back door, or, the ramps just came in, or look at this fish that just came right off the coast and, literally caught at 2 a.m. and here it is 10 a.m. It's in the restaurant and we're starting to butcher it down. If someone gets excited about that, they're probably a great investor to have on board. So that would be my choice. Always try to find someone who not only wants to see a good investment financially, but really gets what you're after and is excited as you are about the food.
Awesome, man. That's good stuff. That's really good advice. So shoot, I mean, Seth, look, you're a busy guy. You've taken a solid half hour of your time to do this, man. And, like, I can't even, I mean, just, I could tell you all day. I share so many beliefs, but I just, for your sake of being respectful of your schedule, and I'm going to let you roll. But, man, I really, really appreciate you doing this. I think anybody listening is going to get excited and passionate, and probably folks that may have, you know, I just think you really inspire people to kind of learn to take a stand for something, and why it's not only good personally for, you know, how you feel about yourself and what you're doing, but it truly is, you know, good for your business. You have 2 successful places. You said you got 2 more in the works. Is that right?
Yeah, that's the plan. I'm looking at least 2 more, if not. There's a potentially for 5 down the road if the plan goes well. But each is a unique individual concept with a different food theme, and always working with local farmers and sustainability, and also being very focused on doing something well rather than lots of different things.
So, folks, you know, look, Seth's been very successful here doing this. Take a stand, and not only will your customers support you, they'll put a tattoo on their body of your logo. So that's how valuable it can be. Hey, listen, thanks, Seth. I appreciate it, man, and just thanks for your time and all the great advice and wisdom and just the kind of inspiring content you gave us today, man. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I really enjoyed talking with you today.
All right, take care, man.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye.